The State of the Union is strong, but the state of the Union is not strong. Will Nancy Pelosi disinvite President Trump? Will President Trump show up anyway? Do we even need a State of the Union speech? We will analyze. Then, Democrat Representative Ilhan Omar implies that Lindsey Graham is gay. Rudy Giuliani implies that President Trump's campaign may have colluded with the Russians. And a pro-life activist gets punched in the face. Then the mailbag. I'm Michael Knowles, and this is The Michael Knowles Show. So much to get to, and first, some breaking news. It's coming in just in the last hour or so. Big developments coming through the Russia probe with regard to how the DOJ and the FBI handled that Steele dossier. It looks like a lot of senior DOJ and FBI officials lied. We're getting this from then Associate Attorney General Bruce Orr's testimony today before Congress. We'll get to that in a second. But first, let's make a little money, honey, with Lending Club. If you are carrying revolving debt, that means that you're not paying off your card every month, and you could be paying thousands in interest every year that you don't have to. With Lending Club, you can consolidate your debt or pay off credit cards with one fixed monthly payment. Since 2007, Lending Club has helped millions of people regain control of their finances with affordable fixed-rate personal loans. You don't need to go to the bank. You don't need high-interest credit cards. This really appeals to me as a millennial because I never want to leave my couch. Just go to lendingclub.com, tell them about yourself, how much you want to borrow, pick the terms that are right for you, and if you're approved, your loan is automatically deposited into your bank account in as little as a few days. You don't even need to deposit a check. Lending Club is the #1 peer-to-peer lending platform with over $35 billion in loans issued. Billion with a B. Just go to lendingclub.com/Knowles, Knowles. Check your rate in minutes and borrow up to 40 G's. That's lendingclub.com/Knowles. Knowles, lendingclub.com/Knowles, Knowles. All loans made by Web Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. I really want to get to the State of the Union today, but first we have to go over this breaking news. Bruce Orr, you might have heard that name with regard to the collusion investigation, the Russia probe, Mueller. It's one of these names that floats around with Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. All of these names, what the Democrats are hoping here is that you are so confused by everything that's going on in the Russia probe that you just can't put the pieces together. Oh, who is Bruce Orr again? Who is this? Who is that? So Bruce Orr was the Associate Attorney General. He was the fourth-ranking official in the entire Department of Justice. He just testified before the House that the DOJ knew about the Steele dossier, the one that had all those lurid, unverified details about weird sex in Moscow, that they had that earlier than had previously been testified. Now, Bruce Orr matters because Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie Orr, was working for Fusion GPS, which was an opposition research firm that put together the Steele dossier, that contracted this guy Christopher Steele to do the Steele dossier. This was bought and paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. Bruce Orr, the Associate Attorney General's wife, was working for them, and Bruce Orr did not publicly disclose this. This is just one of the many things that smell really fishy about this whole Russia investigation. So anyway, Bruce Orr goes up to Congress. He testifies that the previous testimony about when the FBI and DOJ knew about that Steele dossier was false. Previously, we had heard that the DOJ and the FBI did not know about the Steele dossier until September. And so this matters because they then in October went to get a FISA warrant to surveil Carter Page working for the Trump campaign. Okay, now what we find out from Bruce Orr, who's in a real position to know, is that he told the FBI and the DOJ about Christopher Steele, about how Steele was working for the Democrats, about how Christopher Steele, quote, was desperate that Trump not be elected. He told them about this in July. So now they know about this in July. They know that this dossier is not only unverified, but it's politically biased, it's bought and paid for by Democrats, and that the guy who put it together has a serious grudge against Donald Trump, does not want him to be elected. Nevertheless, the FBI and the DOJ persist for a few months. Then they go to get the FISA warrant in October, and they basically lie to the federal judge. So they at least misled the federal judge in October of 2016 to get that FISA warrant. And this is a big deal. You might say, well, lawyers mislead judges all the time. It's very different in the FISA courts. James Comey himself testified about this. He said on December 7th that This amounts to abuse of the FISA system. It is totally expected that when the DOJ and FBI go before the FISA judges, they will present all of the evidence, not just part of the evidence and say, look, some intelligence person says that Donald Trump made a weird videotape in Moscow with a bunch of hookers on Obama's bed. It's not just that you present that, but you'll also say, oh, by the way, this has not been verified. The guy who did it has a grudge against Donald Trump. He's desperate for him not to be elected. Oh, and by the way, it was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. If you leave that part out, you are misleading the federal judge. That's what Bruce Orr, fourth-ranking DOJ official, is alleging now, is testifying before the Congress. This is a game changer. It's not a game changer in that we already knew that this Russia investigation stunk to high heaven, but now we're getting it from the horse's mouth, or at least the fourth-ranking horse's mouth. Really, really big event. I think probably what it means is you're going to see Mueller turn up the heat even more. You're going to see Democrats rally around Mueller even more. But this whole investigation seems illegitimate. We got to talk about the State of the Union, because the State of the Union is coming up. Or maybe it's not. I don't know if maybe it's coming up, maybe it's not coming up. There is a debate now over whether Nancy Pelosi will invite Donald Trump to give the State of the Union, because the State of the Union is held at the Capitol. So the way that it works is the president has his speech, he writes up his memorandum on the State of the Union, and he sends it to the Capitol, and then the Congress invites the president to come give the address. Now the Congress is run by Democrats, so it's up to Nancy Pelosi to invite him. Nancy Pelosi is saying that she won't do it because the government is shut down and there could be security concerns. Here is Nancy Pelosi.
Just during that commercial break, our team on Capitol Hill heard for the first time from Speaker Nancy Pelosi since she essentially uninvited the president for the State of the Union on January 29th. Here's what she had to say.
Homeland Security, about all of the resources that are needed to prepare for a State of the Union address, which she calls an event of special security. And so these people are not working. And we've never really had a State of the Union when government has been in a shutdown since the Budget Act in the 70s. So this is respectfully and sadly, proudly, I invited him to come. It was a privilege to invite him to come.
Now this is
the government to shut down the people who are, that we would have the President of the United States.
She goes on, she talks about how terrible Trump is, but listen to the tack she's taking. She's not saying, I am not going to invite the president because the government is shut down and I hate his guts. She's not doing that. She's trying to seem above it all and so mature, and what she's doing is blaming the Secret Service and the Department of Homeland Security. She said she was proud to invite the president to give the address, but the security, it's so, with the government shut down, how can we possibly protect the president? Don't forget, the government is partially shut down. Nothing has changed. Virtually all government services are still running. But apparently Nancy Pelosi thinks we can't protect the president during a very minor partial shutdown that has not affected virtually any other aspect of the government. This is pretty cynical. She put this in a letter to the president, which is not really a letter to the president. It's a letter to the Washington Post. She wrote this letter to the president. She immediately released it to the press. I assume the president never even got it. And she said, look, the Secret Service and Homeland Security, they say, and they just can't do it. That's a lie. That is a lie. And it's not just a lie because they can do it. It's a lie because they've said that they can do it. A statement was released. The Secret Service and Department of Homeland Security said they can handle security at President Trump's State of the Union address. This is from Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen. She said, quote, the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Secret Service are fully prepared to support and secure the State of the Union. We thank the service for their mission focus and dedication for all that they do each day to secure our homeland. Couldn't be more clear. She could not possibly be more clear about this. So it's a sick play from Nancy Pelosi, and it's weak because he could call her out on this. I mean, the big question is, she has invited him, but now has suggested they have to postpone it because of security. So if he comes back and says, well, my Secretary of Homeland Security said it's absolutely fine, so deal with it, I'm coming. What is she going to do? Is she going to bar him from coming in? I don't think so. I don't really think that's going to work. And most presidents would abide by the rule, but I don't know, Donald Trump probably won't. You know, if any president is going to go barge in like a conservative speaker on a left-wing campus, kick in the doors and go give the speech, it's going to be Donald Trump. So we'll see. I mean, we're getting the reality TV show that we've all asked for. That's why I don't complain about it. This is what we wanted. This is what the president thrives on. This is how he accomplishes much of his agenda. So fine, that's okay. The question is, should we have a State of the Union address at all? Conservatives raise this question all the time. The State of the Union comes from one line in the Constitution, from Article 2, Section 3. It reads, "He shall," referring to the president, "from time to time give to Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient." So I know a lot of conservatives, especially the more libertarian-minded conservatives, they hate the State of the Union. They think it's monarchical. They think it is too regal for America. They read that line and they say he should just mail them a letter and say, okay, there's information, read it, enjoy, whatever you want. But the history of the State of the Union is actually a little more regal than that. And it doesn't just go back the last 50 years. It actually goes back all the way to George Washington. We'll get to it in a second. But first, let's talk about Purple Mattress, which I love. You can hear right now, I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. It's been raining in LA for about 7 years now, and so my allergies are just really, really acting up. It's hard to sleep. It's all this. The only thing that is giving me a good night's sleep is my Purple mattress, which I love, and you know that I love it. Purple is unlike any mattress you've ever slept on. It is not exactly memory foam. It's not an inner spring. It is this proprietary technology developed by a rocket scientist. It's super cool. It is both firm and soft at the same time. What does that mean? I can't really tell you. You have to experience it yourself. It sleeps really cool, unlike some other mattresses where you just feel like it's trapping all the heat. It's just the best mattress I've ever slept on. I'm recommending it to all of my friends. I'm chipping in and buying some for my friends. I just love it. I'm proselytizing the thing. You will love it too. There's a 100-night risk-free trial. If you're not fully satisfied, you can return your mattress for a full refund. You won't return it. It's backed by a 10-year warranty, free shipping and returns, free in-home setup, and old mattress removal. You will love it. And right now, my listeners will get a free Purple pillow with the purchase of a mattress. That's in addition to the great gifts they're offering site-wide. How do you get it? Just text COVFEFE, C-O-V-F-E-F-E, to 474747. That's the only way to get this free pillow. To text COVFEFE, C-O-V-F-E-F-E, to 474747. C-O-V-F-E-F-E, 474747. Message and data rates may apply. It's a small price to pay for the best sleep of your life. So these conservatives, especially the libertarian-minded ones, hate the State of the Union. They want to get rid of it, and they think it's just too British. You know, it's like the king walking in his robes and sitting on the throne, and that's anti-American and that's terrible. I have a little bit of a different view on this because they push it too much. They take it too much to an extreme. The State of the Union, contrary to what they say, is not only really a product of the 20th century. George Washington gave a State of the Union address on January 8th, 1790. He gave that one, obviously not in the White House, which didn't exist yet, but in New York City. And he delivered the speech, and he was a pretty regal guy. And people stood when he was in the room, and he was certainly no, lowercase d Democrat populist or anything like that. There was a real dignity to the office, obviously a real dignity to the man, and a dignity to the speech. Thomas Jefferson scrapped the practice when he became president, and this tells you all you need to know because Thomas Jefferson was much more of a lowercase d Democrat. He despised the idea of a monarchy or anything monarchical in America, so he discontinued it, and that tradition held for over 100 years. It held until Woodrow Wilson, one of the worst presidents in American history. In 1913, Wilson reestablished the practice. So now the real historical record is a little more complex. Washington did it, so I like that. Jefferson didn't do it, which makes me like the State of the Union even more. Wilson did it, which makes me not like the State of the Union. What are we to land on? He gave the speech. It then continued throughout the 20th century. I believe the last time we skipped it was Jimmy Carter in 1981. Jimmy Carter was so bitter that he had lost the election to Ronald Reagan that he refused to give a State of the Union address, and he just sent the address to Congress and they read it. I will say, Antonin Scalia would not attend the State of the Union. He thought it was a ridiculous farce, and he despised that the judges couldn't smile or move or do anything while they were listening to the executive branch. He felt that it subordinated the judicial to the executive. I kind of like it. I kind of like the State of the Union, in so much as the office of the president he's not just a dog catcher. He's not just a guy at the DMV. He's not just your county executive. There is a real dignity there because he represents the spirit of the nation, the ethos of the nation. He is the executive, and as the nation, as the greatest country in the history of the world, the superpower on earth, this imbues the office with a sense of the regal. It imbues the office with a real dignity and a real gravity. So I kind of like it for that reason. I think it would be bizarre and incongruous if the president, just sent out a tweet on the State of the Union. I guess if any president were going to do that, it would be this president. But he's also a good showman as well. And the other reason, we've been talking all week about these different strains of conservative thought. The grander sort of conservatives, the traditionalist conservatives maybe would prefer it a little bit more. The libertarians, not so much. But one thing we should be able to agree on is, even if you hate the State of the Union, this is not the way to get rid of the State of the Union. This is the way to get rid of it is not through a temper tantrum because Nancy Pelosi doesn't like Donald Trump. That seems kind of wrong to me. The conservative tends to prefer evolution to revolution. We like gradual things. We don't like crazy radical change all at once. And this would seem to be a really sad way for the State of the Union, a legacy of George Washington, to disappear from American public life or to be skipped over. That seems wrong. Nancy Pelosi should grow up. She's probably not going to grow up, even though she's been called out on the lies that are the basis for her not having President Trump give the State of the Union. He should show up anyway. If she won't have him, he should show up anyway and just take over that chamber. Donald Trump, apparently the White House is now asking Mitch McConnell to see if the Senate Majority Leader can invite the president to give the State of the Union. Traditionally, it is the Speaker of the House. Could the Senate Majority Leader do it? I don't know. I don't know that anybody really has an answer to that. So they're looking at that. But in any case, Pelosi has invited him, and he should take her up on that invitation. We've got to get back to Russia briefly, because there was a bizarre exchange on Chris Cuomo's show on CNN today. There are usually bizarre exchanges on Chris Cuomo's show. This is not exactly a man bites dog story, but Rudy Giuliani, the lawyer for the president, seems to imply that the Trump campaign may have colluded with Russia. Now, I don't think this is the bombshell story that the mainstream media are making it out to be, but you've got to watch the clip and decide for yourself.
I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Yes,
I have no idea if I have not. I said the President of the United States. There is not a single bit of evidence the President of the United States committed the only crime you could commit here, conspired with the Russians to hack the DNC.
First of all, crime is not the bar of accountability for a president. It's about what you knew,
well, he didn't
what was
with
right
Russia
and
either.
what was wrong, and what did you deceive about. Those are going to be major considerations.
The president did not.
He said nobody had any contact. Tons of people had contact. Nobody
is.
colluded.
Okay, so the big headline, NBC, New York Times, is that Trump's lawyer is unsure whether campaign colluded with Russia. Now, this was not a great media appearance for Rudy Giuliani, but it's not as big a story it seems, because we already know that virtually everybody on both sides of this question colluded with the Russians, whatever that means. First of all, define collusion. What do we mean by collusion? The reason that the Democrats glommed onto this term is because it's so vague. There's no crime of collusion. There's no impeachable offense of collusion. What does collusion mean? Do I collude with my barista when I go get a coffee in the morning? Do I collude with Andrew Klavan? Regularly I collude with Andrew Klavan. Does Ben collude with gangsters to have me assassinated? I don't know. I'm just saying, what does collusion mean? We know that Paul Manafort colluded with the Russians, okay? We know that not during the Trump campaign maybe, but we know that he's worked with pro-Russian forces in Ukraine. This was no secret. He was a lobbyist, an international lobbyist, a very prominent one. By the way, we know that Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman's brother, Tony Podesta, major Democrat lobbyist, also colluded with the Russians on the same campaign. Now, we know that the Democrats and Hillary Clinton and the FBI and the DOJ colluded with the Russians on the Russia investigation. How do we know that? Because they went through Fusion GPS, funded by the DNC and Hillary, to contract Christopher Steele to get them dirt on Donald Trump. And Christopher Steele got that dirt by talking to Russian intelligence and people familiar with Russian intelligence. That's the only way he could have gotten the dirt. All of the information, the apparent state-owned, Kremlin-owned Donald Trump sex tape, that would have had to come from sources within Russian intelligence. So we actually know for a fact that all of the Democrat forces, plus the federal government under Barack Obama, colluded with the Russians in a way much more significant than Paul Manafort, who was briefly the chairman of the Trump campaign, doing some lobbying work for the Russians years ago. The question is not about collusion, as Rudy Giuliani rightly points out. The question is, was there a crime committed? And listen, Chris Cuomo gives away the whole story here. He gives away the whole game of the left. He said, well, the bar of accountability is not crime for the president. The bar of accountability is not crime, because what Chris Cuomo wants to do is lower the bar of accountability to ever having watched a Rocky and Bullwinkle episode or to ever have read a Russian novel. And then all of a sudden you can say, see, he's compromised by the Russians, and they can get him to be impeached or run him out of office, run him out of town on a rail. The bar of accountability here is crime. Cuomo is completely wrong, and Giuliani is right. The bar of accountability is not only crime, it's high crimes and misdemeanors. Not misdemeanors meaning, minor offenses like we discussed now. High crimes. We're talking about high crimes and misdemeanors, as that phrase was understood to mean in the drafting of the Constitution and the ratification. Did President Trump commit a crime? That's what you've got to ask yourself when you hear about Bruce Orr, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Andy McCabe. If you've got Bruce Orr telling all of these people, that the Christopher Steele dossier was funded by Democrats, there was this grudge, and all of those people didn't report this or kept it quiet or wouldn't tell the FISA court judge. You hear all of these names, all of these questions, what these timelines, these days, these that. Ask yourself one question. What crime did Donald Trump commit? They're now trying to get him on a campaign finance violation, which is minor. It is nothing. They couldn't even get ex-Senator John, John Roberts? What was that guy's name? No, John Roberts is the Chief Justice of the Court. Gosh, that guy was so forgettable that he ran for president in 2008 and we don't even remember his name anymore. Whatever. Someone can write it in the comments. They couldn't even get him on this question. And so the question is the crime. Did he commit a crime with Russian intelligence? John Edwards, that was his name. That's confusing because the psychic TV guy is also named John Edwards. I don't know. There are a lot of, look, John is a very common name, but they couldn't get him. What is the crime that they're going to get Donald Trump on? If Chris Cuomo can't give an answer to that, then it's all just huff and puff and puff and a whole lot of hot air, but they can't actually nail down the question. We've also got to get to Lindsey Graham because this was outrageous. But first, and we got the mailbag coming up. Ben Shapiro tomorrow will be taking his show on the road to the March for Life in D.C. at 10 a.m. Eastern. Ben will be live streaming at the National Mall and 12th Street. So if you're planning to be at the march, head over and see him in person. If you are on Facebook and YouTube, go over to dailywire.com. It's $10 a month, $100 for an annual membership. You get me, you get the Andrew Klavan Show, you get the Ben Shapiro Show, you get to ask questions in the mailbag, you get the Matt Walsh Show, you get to ask questions backstage, you get Another Kingdom, you get everything. Most importantly, you get the only vessel to drink during the State of the Union when President Trump rides in, kicks down the door of the Congress, disbands the parliament like Charles II, goes in and gives his Make America Great Again, 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 Again speech for the State of the Union. You're going to need this Leftist Tears tumbler to collect all of those salty, delicious leftist tears. Go to dailywire.com. We'll be right back.